The Lost Medal of Truth. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the small town of Amberville. It was a quiet, almost forgotten place, where the streets seemed to whisper with old secrets, and the air carried a faint, otherworldly chill. In the middle of it all was Amberville High School, a seemingly ordinary building that had been standing for decades, its bricks worn and weathered, its hallways echoing with the laughter of students. But there was something unusual about the school, something no one could quite put their finger on. And on this particular evening, something was about to happen that would change the course of a young boy's life forever. Lucas was no different from any other teenager at Amberville High. He was a bright student, though a little quiet, and had always stayed out of trouble. He loved reading, often lost in books about fantasy realms and worlds beyond his own. But there was one thing that set him apart, a shiny, gold medal his grandmother had given him when he was younger. It was a small thing, hardly noticeable to anyone who didn't know its significance, but to Lucas, it was everything. It was his constant reminder of who he was, where he came from, and the promises his grandmother had made to him. "Honesty will always lead you to the truth, Lucas," she had said with a knowing smile as she placed it in his palm. That day had started like any other, with the typical humdrum of school life. But something felt off, as if the air itself was charged with an electric current that made his skin tingle. He'd had a strange dream the night before, one that left him uneasy, as though the world around him wasn't quite what it seemed. The dream had been about the medal. He had lost it, but not in the way he would expect. It wasn't lost through carelessness or forgetfulness. It was taken from him by someone unseen, someone who knew his deepest fears. Now, as he sat in his history class, his hand instinctively went to his neck, but the medal was gone. Panic surged through him as he realized it must have slipped off during recess. He was sure he had left it in his locker that morning, but the overwhelming sense of dread told him otherwise. He tried to stay calm, but his heart raced as his teacher droned on about ancient civilizations, their stories fading into a blur. He barely heard the bell ring, signaling the end of class. His classmates rushed out of the room, laughing and talking, but Lucas stayed behind, his mind reeling. "I've got to find it," he muttered to himself. His fingers trembled as he picked up his bag and hurried to the hallway. The school was nearly empty by the time Lucas made his way to the locker room, his eyes scanning every inch of the floor, the lockers, the walls. But there was no sign of the medal. He knew deep down that it wasn't just about the medal, it was about something much deeper, something he couldn't explain. It was as if losing it would unravel the very fabric of his identity. Looking for something, a voice called from behind him. Lucas whipped around to see Alex, a classmate he barely knew, standing with a smirk on his face.
Yeah.
"My medal. Have you seen it?" Lucas asked, trying to sound casual, but his voice betrayed him. Alex raised an eyebrow. "What's so special about a medal?" Lucas hesitated, unsure whether he should reveal the true significance. But there was something about Alex's eyes, something dark and knowing, that made him uneasy. It's important to me. Really important." "Well, I haven't seen it," Alex said, shrugging. "But hey, if you're looking for it so bad, I'm sure it'll turn up." With that, Alex walked away, leaving Lucas standing there, feeling even more unsettled than before. The next few days passed in a blur. Lucas couldn't concentrate in class. His thoughts kept drifting to the missing medal and the strange feeling that had settled in his chest. Was it really just lost? Or had someone taken it on purpose? And if so, who? More importantly, why? The questions gnawed at him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something much bigger than just a missing piece of jewelry. Then, on the third day after the disappearance, something unexpected happened. Lucas was walking home from school when he saw a familiar figure approaching him. It was Sarah, a girl from his history class. She had always been kind to him, but they weren't particularly close. Today, though, there was something different about her. She was holding something in her hand, something small and shiny. "Hey, Lucas," she said, her voice soft. "I think I found something that belongs to you." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. He reached out and took the small, golden medal from Sarah's hand. His fingers trembled as he held it up to the light, seeing the engraving on the back, the inscription that had been there since the day his grandmother gave it to him. "How did you?" Lucas started, but Sarah interrupted him, her eyes filled with a strange intensity. "I'm not sure. I found it by the old oak tree behind the school. It wasn't there before. But when I saw it, I knew it belonged to you," she said, her voice trailing off as if she were in a trance. Lucas stared at her, feeling a sense of confusion and wonder. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words wouldn't come. There was something about the way Sarah was looking at him, something he couldn't quite place, that sent a chill down his spine. "Thank you," he finally managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. "You're welcome," Sarah replied, her smile almost sad. "But just so you know, this medal isn't just a piece of metal, Lucas. It's part of something much bigger. You need to remember that. And remember the lesson your grandmother taught you." Lucas blinked, unable to make sense of her words. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, Sarah turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Lucas stood there, holding the medal, his mind racing with questions. What did she mean? Was there more to this medal than he had realized? And what lesson had his grandmother truly wanted him to learn? That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying the events of the day, the disappearance of the medal, Sarah's cryptic words, the strange, almost otherworldly aura surrounding it all. He decided to take a walk, hoping the cool night air would clear his head. As he wandered through the streets, he found himself drawn to the old cemetery at the edge of town. He had never been there before, but something about it felt familiar. He stepped inside, his footsteps muffled by the thick grass, and wandered among the gravestones. The moonlight bathed the area in a soft, silvery glow, and for a moment, Lucas felt as if he were in another world, one where time didn't exist. Suddenly, he stopped. A figure appeared in the distance, standing near a gravestone. It was his grandmother's gravestone. But the figure wasn't anyone he recognized. It was an older woman, dressed in a flowing black gown, her face obscured by a veil. "Grandmother?" Lucas whispered, his heart pounding. The woman didn't respond. Instead, she turned and began to walk away, disappearing into the mist that seemed to rise from the ground. Lucas ran after her, but no matter how fast he moved, he couldn't catch up. Then, a voice broke through the silence. It was his grandmother's voice, soft but clear, as though she were speaking directly into his mind. "Lucas, remember what I told you. Honesty leads to the truth. And sometimes, the truth is more than just what you can see. Trust in yourself." Lucas stopped dead in his tracks, the realization hitting him like a ton of bricks. He had always been so focused on the medal, so obsessed with its meaning, that he had failed to see the true lesson. It wasn't about the medal at all. It was about trust, about being honest with himself, about embracing the unknown, even when it scared him. When he returned home that night, Lucas sat in front of his desk, the medal still clutched tightly in his hand. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and let go of his fear. And as he did, something incredible happened. The medal glowed softly, as if responding to his newfound clarity, and in that moment, Lucas understood. The world was full of mysteries, yes, but it was also full of beauty. And the only way to truly experience it was to be honest, not only with others, but with himself. The next day, Lucas returned to school, the medal hanging proudly around his neck. He had learned that honesty didn't just bring back lost things, it revealed the hidden truths of life. And as he walked through the hallways, his heart light and his mind clear, He knew that no matter what the future held, he would always carry that lesson with him. And somewhere, in the distance, a new chapter of his life was just beginning, one where the line between fantasy and reality would blur, and where the truth would always be his guide.
Whispering echoes